record, it's a protection for the minister, and it is a protection for this House. So I'm not doubting that there is such Treasury advice, because the Minister has assured us, but I want to know that it is available, that it is in writing, because it's something, sir, that will have to be tested going forward.
In response to that, there are sort of layers around the reasons why a part or an SOP can be ruled out. And this is not a financial veto, which probably has the higher level of standards around about it. But this is a requirement, the 24-hour rule, and I'll just remind members again that all members in this House are honourable members, and if the Minister gives me his word that he has received advice, it is not, in my opinion, my responsibility to then require him to present to me the written evidence of having had that advice. Now, I think Honourable Darren Hughes.
Mr. Chairman, I've got several points to raise with you. If I take the point you've just raised, the Speaker's rulings contain the phrase official advice with regard to 119(4). That must mean something, the inclusion of the word official. Now, as Mr Mallard has said to you, we've now had the Minister say verbally that the cost is between 600,000 and 1 million, and that will have to be something that, of course, if the official information is found down the track not to have existed, and the Minister said that in the House that it does, and that's what his advice is, and when Mr Mallard asked about that, Mr Brownlee waved a piece of paper that's acting as his bookmark in the Speaker's in the standing orders, that is a handwritten note that's been ripped out of a notebook because it's perforated along the side. That cannot possibly constitute, sir, official advice to the Government of New Zealand about this matter. So I want to raise that point with you. I want to raise a second point, sir, about the fact that when you read 119(4), Mr Mallard's quoted the first part, it is quite proper for the Minister to raise the issue on official advice. And then it finishes off, although it is finally for the chairperson to rule. Now, sir, this is a very important point for you, because I noticed when the point of order was taken at 2 o'clock, you were very well, you had a lot of information at your fingertips to be able to give 4 points to us when you were ruling on it. But, sir, the ability of the opposition to propose amendments to legislation, whether it's in support of or disagreement with the law, is quite an important point. And, sir, the reason that I raised that is that previously it was totally out of order for an opposition to put forward any amendments that had any fiscal impact whatsoever. And the changes to the standing orders at the end of 1995 that came into effect in 1996 altered that so that an amendment could come from the opposition that might have some costing associated with it. But rather than using the term financial impact, i.e. $1 or more, the term fiscal aggregates was used, so it could be clear that small amendments that involved a small cost as a percentage of the government's total spend would not be simply ruled out or dismissed. Now, sir, it's very hard to accept that in a government budget of around $60,000 million, a review of $500,000 is somehow some extraordinary change to the government's fiscal aggregates. A stay at a hotel in Tonga or a trip on the Inter-Islander do not have big impacts on the government's fiscal aggregates either. These are the sorts of figures that we're talking about. This is a device being used by the government to try and stop the the opposition from being able to propose amendments to the legislation. And if you, sir, in your position is, which they can still vote down, they'll have the option shortly. We've spent about an hour on this particular part discussing it. The government have the option of voting against it to show that they're not in support of it. But, sir, if you as chairman accept that a minister who's feeling frustrated at the length of time of a debate says, oh, well, look, that's just too expensive, and is not required to supply with anything written that's then available for the House to look at, and doesn't give any detail around what it is, and when the Speaker's rulings require you, or say it would not require you, but make the point that it is finally for you to rule on this, then the opposition could have all of its amendments ruled out for all time, because there is a cost in the simple fact that an amendment is accepted by the committee forces a printer to go somewhere within the government. That's a financial cost. And if the government go down this path of not only stopping us from having question time, but stopping the government opposition from proposing amendments, because by nature there's going to be a cost of some amount, a fiscal impact, that is different to fiscal aggregates, which is the way our Speaker's rulings and standing orders have been written. And I think this is a really critical point, sir, and the opposition respectfully seeks your assistance with it, because otherwise there's no point doing any of these debates, because as soon as the Leader of the House loses his temper about these matters, the ball's thrown and we all have to go home, and that seems preposterous to me.
Yeah, I want to refer you to Speaker's Ruling 1364 and go back to the question of the perforated piece of paper from a notebook that has come that the Minister is relying on. And reading this in full, if an official document is not just a piece of paper with notes for the Minister's guidance, but it's a more formal piece of writing conveying a message or memorandum or recording some matter between officials of the government or between government and other persons. And so that is the sort of document which, in my opinion, consists of advice. That is the way that ministers get advice. It is official. There is a proper record of that. And so and I don't know in whose hand the note on the perforated piece of note paper is. But sir, it's my submission to you that in that form cannot be an official document, and therefore cannot be the advice, cannot be the source of the advice that this minister has received, sir. And it is, and just as a matter of guidance on aggregates, my memory is that as far as Dr. Cullen was concerned, that it had to have more than $10 million before he would.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, is that okay?
Yeah. Can you just sum up? Because
well, the next point that I'm making, as to an effect on the aggregates, Dr. Cullen's view was that there was a figure of $10 million, at which point he would start being interested as to whether it had an effect on the aggregates. Because what Dr. Cullen used to make clear was that the government had a majority in the House. If we didn't like an amendment, we voted against it, rather than attempted to have it ruled out through this method or a fiscal veto. And what he saw as an effect on the fiscal aggregates, either to trigger this clause or generally something which was bigger in order to trigger the financial veto, was something much more significant than something which at most would be $1 million, and the best estimate is probably about 200,000.
Okay, let me deal with what I think are 3 points that have come out of, and can I say I think this is a useful debate. Well, it shouldn't be a debate, a series of points of orders around some process on this stuff. So I regard this as quite valuable. Let me deal with the last point that Honourable Mallard raised first, in terms of the amount. There is no guidance for me anywhere that I can find in standing orders or Speaker's ruling or McGee or anywhere which actually defines the amount. That is the prerogative of the government. And if it was to be 10 million or any figure, it would be enshrined somewhere. And that's my difficulty in moving away from saying this doesn't fit or that doesn't fit. There is no documented evidence for me to go to in order to determine what is trivial. Right, now let's go to whether or not it's appropriate or proper for the Minister to have raised this matter. And we go to, again, 1114 in Speaker's rulings, and it just says quite clearly, second last sentence, it is quite proper for the Minister to raise an issue on official advice. And then the members raised, well, is this an official document? And it doesn't say official document, it says official advice. Again, there is nowhere in the time I've had at my disposal to look at this matter that there is a specification around what is official advice. And as I said earlier, I have to accept that the member has received advice, and so I rule on that. Now, then we come to the matter of the responsibility of the chair, which I guess is my responsibility. And I go to McGee, latest edition 381, and in the fourth paragraph, in regard to this matter, it says, the chairman does not determine such a matter on the balance of probabilities.